It's a social program. Keeping their currency low is a social program.
The Chinese did show again this week that they are still somewhat in fear of their own people, which is why they clamp down so hard on communication.
And I would disagree with Bob to the extent that our weak hand is of our own doing. And, you know, when you go to China and you've basically got, it looks like from the outside, two major objectives you're trying to achieve. One is the valuation of the currency, encouraging them to move to a free market model. And secondly is getting them on board on Iran. And you've either not done enough groundwork or you have naively believed that if you refuse to meet with the Dalai Lama and you defer decisions on arms sales to Taiwan, that the Chinese will fall in line. You're not going to accomplish anything. So, you know, we had yet another foreign trip, which was, I think, sadly, style over substance. And, you know, the problem is that with each of these trips, we're weakening ourselves. And we are sending a very negative message to our allies in Asia and around the world, frankly, that we are willing to let the Chinese regime stage manage a trip like this. And I get the sense there's no understanding inside the White House about the value of American power and prestige. We certainly are more powerful than China, and we should not be, through our words and actions, giving the impression that we believe we are two equal superpowers in the world.
For 37 years, every administration has bet, since Nixon went to China, on a theory. And the theory was that capitalism, market economy, which requires a judicial system to enforce promises, which are called contracts, needs a vast dissemination of information and decision-making, that capitalism by its mores and working would subvert the regime, that you could not have an authoritarian market society. It's the Starbucks fallacy, turns out to be a fallacy, that if the Chinese have a choice of coffees, they'll demand a choice of political candidates. We may be wrong. It could be you can have an authoritarian system.
That is actually, you know, there's some great truth to that. And in the long run, you're not going to be able to sustain an economy where you allow people all sorts of choice when they're trying to do their business, but don't allow them the free flow of information. It won't work in the information age.
As an American president, you can demand, sorry, just one thing, you can demand when you go into China and you're going to have a press conference, you can say, we're taking questions. Yeah. I mean, there are very clear steps you can take to send the message that we actually believe in freedom and democracy.
I agree with Liz. I think that in preparation for this trip, as in many others, even the trip to Europe to try to sell Chicago as the Olympics, there needs to be more thought about the appearance of weakness or strength that may come out of the trip. But I want to go back to, George, your point, because I think the big issue over the next 10 years and the big contest is going to be between authoritarian capitalism, a la China, and democratic capitalism, a la the United States. And it's not clear to me that authoritarian capitalism is not going to win. That is, there is so much efficiency. The Chinese say, we're going to build 10 new universities, we're going to build this, we're going to build this, and boom, it happens.
You guys manage to do it every time, right and left agreeing on a or seeming to agree on a pretty fundamental
point.
I'm bet on democratic capitalism.
Look, me too. I'll be with Liz.
I am betting on democratic capitalism, but I think that the authoritarian capitalism, we cannot understate the threat to the way we go about our business, the way we think about the world.
This, of course, the president a bit preoccupied while he's overseas, planning his announcement on Afghanistan, on troops to Afghanistan. And one of the key elements, George, is that the president is trying to convince some of our NATO allies to increase their troop commitment as American troops are increased as well, which seems inevitable.
Well, the problem is that often those troops come so encumbered with domestic restraints imposed by their governments as to what they can and cannot do that they're hardly worth the trouble to get another 1,000 Germans or Dutch soldiers over there. Not disparaging the efforts they're making, but they are circumscribed. The danger is that the president is going to be seen as escalating this war. He'll do it half-heartedly with his heart not in it. He will lose his party, and he'll be supported by Republicans of the stripe of Liz Cheney, and that's not a sustainable path.
Well, let me just say that what I support is a strategy that actually will win in Afghanistan, a strategy that's the one that was laid out by General McChrystal. And I think it's just completely inexcusable that we've now had month after month after month a photo op out of the White House and no decision. The president is very fond of saying, before I commit troops, I'm going to think very carefully about it. Somebody in the White House needs to remind him he's already committed troops. We've got American men and women in Afghanistan today because we've got to prevent Afghanistan from again becoming a safe haven for al-Qaeda. The cost of walking away, the cost of defeat, the cost of retreat is huge. They're fighting there today, and they're fighting without the kind of resources and reinforcement that he needs.
Does he have to worry about Republicans pulling the rug out from under it. I think George's political analysis is dead right. He is not going to get votes from Democrats on increasing troops. Will Republicans stand by that recommendation if the president makes it?
Republicans will stand by a recommendation that allows us to win a war the president himself called necessary. I think it is absolutely critical that we win in Afghanistan.
But
now, George isn't standing by the recommendation. I mean, George has got a different view on this.
He's got a different view. I'm talking about Republicans in the House and the Senate.
Look, the president has failed so far to indicate specifically to the American people what our objective is, how we know we're succeeding, and how we're going to get out. And this is exactly what we went through in Iraq. I mean, the American people, putting aside Democratic versus Republican partisanship, American people don't want another Iraq. They don't want to go into a place where you have a corrupt regime, where Karzai is not a partner who can be relied upon, and just get embroiled into
But they also remember, though, Bob, what happened the last time we walked away from Afghanistan. And the stakes here are so tremendous. The last time we left Afghanistan, al-Qaeda was able to gain a foothold, and it was from Afghanistan that the attacks of 9/11 were carried out.
But Pakistan is the issue. Pakistan is the place.
That's right, but you can't deal with Pakistan without Afghanistan.
But Liz, it seems to me that the whole strategy of trying to secure and hold and then occupy large parts of territory is going to, in the long run and the medium run, be a no-win situation for us. We have to find, I mean, nobody is going to appreciate us going in and trying to secure an occupied territory. It's a type of thing that's not in our DNA, an occupation like that. So we need a strategy that seems to me somehow to support those anti-Taliban forces. Dexter Filkins has a great article in the New York Times today about ways to support indigenous anti-Taliban forces without us having to occupy the territory.
But what we learned in Iraq, Walter, was that the way that you actually go in and secure area is by giving the people in that area the kind of confidence that they need to know that we are going to be there. The Sunni uprising, though, was, if you look at the timing of it, the awakening was very much tied to the surge, and very much tied to when the Iraqi people realized that we weren't going to abandon them. We need people in Afghanistan to give us intelligence. We need them to tell us who the bad guys are. And if they think we're leaving, they won't do it.
But the president would argue, and Democrats would argue, that it was only the certainty that we would eventually leave that convinced Iraqis to take matters into their own hands as well, and they're going to apply that same argument in Afghanistan.
And now the problem is that the Afghan villager has to make a choice. Does he bet his long-term future on the presence of the Taliban, which is indigenous, or the United States, which is not going to be there forever?
We only have a minute.